Hey, what's up, everybody? Glad you're with me this week for the podcast. This week I've got a good friend of mine by the name of Mike Lyon, author, artist. His new book is out, I'm Not Hitler. You can get it on artisticlion.com. Looking forward to talking to Mike. I've known him for about 15 years. He's an artist, he's an author, he's an entrepreneur, and he's got great ideas about how life should be lived. Looking very much forward to this. I have been since I asked him to be on the podcast a few months ago. Sit back, enjoy, and we'll see you on the other side. All right, we're live. Mike Lyon, thanks for joining me, man.
Pleasure to be here.
The man, the myth, the legend, straight out of Deep Ellum, Texas, Mike Lyon.
Thank you so much.
Where are you from, man?
Dude, I am a sixth-generation Texan.
Okay.
I like to brag about that.
You should.
Grew up in mid-cities, and if you know Arlington at all, we have a couple of streets named after us. If you drive through Arlington, there's Cooper Street. The next two exits are Kelly Elliott and Kelly Perkins, and I've got my Kelly crest tattooed on my back, so I care about that stuff.
Yeah.
Like the whole Texas mystique, all that.
You're a proud Irishman?
Some Irish in me for sure with that Kelly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome,
How about
man.
you?
I'm from up in the Northwest.
But
Hence my handle, my Instagram handle.
That's right.
Jess from the Northwest.
But what about the ethnicity and nationality and all
Lots
that?
of German,
Okay.
some Scottish, a sliver of French, and some English.
Okay.
But lots of German and Scottish,
I like it.
for sure.
I'm going to do the interview now. So tell me
Okay.
how you really feel right now. No.
So you've lived here your whole life, high school in the mid-cities.
Yes, sir.
And what, right out of high school, what were you up to?
Man, right out of high school, worked at General Motors
Really?
for 9 months, which could tie into the journey somewhat. You know, when you learn those life lessons of working
Right.
all kinds of different funky gigs, and union guys are interesting. And I'll go down a rabbit trail for half a second on that. I remember, I was working what they called a 90-day. You're an 89er, and it meant you were going to work for 90 days and you were going to college. So my first day, the line stops at like 2:41. It was a big old assembly line, General Motors plant in Arlington. You have 30 minutes to eat. So I go through the line at the cafeteria, big long table. There's 6 or 7 blank, empty seats, 5 guys down at the end. I'm about to set my tray down. Can't sit here, it's union. Like, what? Pardon me? You're an 89er, college boy.
Gotcha.
It's a union table. Can't sit here. Interesting.
Yeah.
So seeing those kind of cats, and then I still remember this, and we're talking, this is 30 years ago.
Right.
So I was hanging doors on the assembly line back in the body shop, and there was a guy, so again, the line doesn't stop. And I still remember this dude that would sit over in the corner, and he was going to SMU, big old fro, cool looking dude, reading a book, and he was so proficient on the line that he could hang all his doors and get real caught up and then run back to his chair and study. So you're all about efficiency, go hard,
Yeah.
maximize your efforts, and that still stuck with me where I was like, that dude knows how to get after it. He's got a future planned, and even as he's working this line, he's like, able to control his destiny sort
So
of.
what
it
is
was a
he,
cool
some
lesson.
high-powered Dallas attorney now or
He's
something?
probably running a city somewhere.
Yeah,
owns
running a
sports
city.
team or
Yeah,
something.
there you go.
But
One of
but
those
those
two.
things stick with you. I mean, you've
100%.
got that kind of, where you, like I call them touch points, and there's stuff I look at through a faith-based lens. But then there's just life things that happen, and we can cover that at some point. But
Yeah.
but those are those things where it's like right out of high school, you're learning things,
Absolutely.
people skills, whether you know it or not, and how people are wired. That kind of stuff is fascinating.
Yeah, man. I mean, you and I met, 12 or 13, maybe 14 years ago through rugby. Yeah.
Yes.
And that's a crazy story, which we'll touch on a little bit, but you're an interesting guy, man. I mean, you don't follow the mold, the corporate, get a job, keep a job. I mean, you're an interesting guy. You've obviously got an artistic and an author side to you. I just read your book, I'm Not Hitler by Mike Lyon. Check it out. Great book. when you were growing up, what did you want to be? I mean, you wanted to play in the NBA, or what did you want to be when you were growing up?
Exactly that. So I grew no, for real. So
Yeah.
I played basketball in high school, and
Then you
had
figured
those-
out you couldn't jump.
figured out
Yeah.
that height deficiency,
Yeah.
no jumping skills,
Right.
and like that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But now, I mean, I appreciate even what you said of, earlier I was talking and I said, I used the word lean in.
Yep.
And I guess at the time, I don't even know if I had any kind of dream of what I wanted to be, but when the NBA dream got, burst,
Yep.
graduated college, had done some acting, had done some modeling. I'm having to think about this now at the time that I wanted
Modeling?
to do that. Yes.
Hand modeling? Or was your
Not
face
hand modeling.
involved?
They actually used my face, believe it or
I'll be
not. You're
gosh
shocked
dang.
by that.
No, man, you're a sexy guy. Congrats, brother.
Thank you. Coming
Absolutely.
From Jess.
Yeah.
Mark, does anybody still call you Diesel?
I mean,
rugby
a lot
days?
of the knuckleheads from rugby do. Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So no, I didn't have that big.
I mean, I drove up in one today. So
A diesel?
Yeah.
Nice.
Got to
Live it out.
Really got to keep the brand rolling,
Like it. Very good.
So you did acting, modeling, kind of just finding your way.
Yeah. But this is one of those pivotal touch points. So I had this idea of after college, I'm going to go to LA and give it the old college
Sweet.
effort trying to be an actor.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I had a little bit of success here. And so this is one of those big, major moments that gets me to where I am today as an artist. Mm-hmm. So I was studying communications in college.
Where'd you go to college?
UTA
Okay.
in Arlington.
Moving Mavs, brother.
The moving Mavs, yeah. Not a good student, but muscled my way through. But last couple of semesters took a painting class. Still with this idea of like I'm going to get the degree and get in the car and drive to LA. So during that time I had a girlfriend up in New York. I went to visit her and we would walk around the streets of Manhattan and there were these guys that were airbrushing Levi's jean jackets, putting images of Prince and Jim Morrison and all that stuff. And I was like, wow, it's badass. And I'd just taken this painting class. So I come back here from New York after visiting the girlfriend, living with a couple of dudes, and I was like, man, I saw these guys painting jean jackets. I'm going to do one of those. One of my roommates, he's like, I don't think you can do it. Let's make a bet. So I painted an image of Stevie Ray Vaughan on his Levi's jean jacket.
Awesome.
And I still have it. So I wear it out one night.
I need a photo of that.
I'll send it to you.
Stevie Ray.
Yeah, it's cool. So I wear it out one night, and this is answering your question about you kind of figure out, like, what am I doing here on this planet? So I go to see Albert Collins, blues guitarist. Seen him at a blues bar, and while I'm standing there, I feel this person behind me kind of pulling on the jacket to straighten out to look at the image. Taps me on the shoulder. I turn on this gorgeous, cool black chick, long dreads. She's like, where'd you get that jacket? And I go, I painted it. She goes, no shit, no way, you painted that? I go, yeah. She goes, for real, you painted that? I go, yes. Hands me her card, and she works for Warner Brothers.
Wow.
She goes, we'll buy those from you. And I go, and I'm in the moment, I'm going, what? Like making a living as a creative person had never entered my mind.
Okay.
The acting thing, sort of, but I didn't associate it with art, advertising, any of that. So I just remember looking at her card going, what do you mean? And she goes, we'll sell those as promotional items.
Wow.
Changed because I just about to graduate. So from her, she introduced, I started doing jean jackets for them, these other promotions. I was like, man, I can make a little money. She introduced me to these two women that had a clothing design company. They needed a designer to design hand-painted jackets for them. They start paying me.
Wow.
So I got so busy I needed a studio, which is why I moved to Deep Ellum in Dallas. But I mean, that changed the trajectory of everything. Because I was like, man, this art thing is cool. Forget the LA thing, and then just doors started opening.
Sure.
So that's one of those pivotal, like, wow, if she wouldn't have tapped me on the shoulder, started making, I mean, I was making a living. And then I started doing large-scale portraits.
Yeah.
So then the art career started, was making a living as an artist.
That's
And
crazy.
then I end up here at the future Joe Rogan's podcast.
The Table of Truth. When you were growing up, were you artistic? Were you sketching and doing things like that, and working with your hands and stuff like that, or
Not at all. So that was one of those
just college? You're like, I'm going to take a painting class. Why? Because you needed an elective or something?
So I was studying communications, and I had what UTA called advertising was actually marketing. So I ended up doing an internship at the Richards Group, and the guy was like, well, let me see your portfolio. And I'm like, what do you mean portfolio?
Right.
So I had to switch to go over into the art department while I was taking design classes. Then I was like, well, I'll try to do a drawing, and I took one painting class. But to answer your question, like I've got buddies who are professional illustrators. They've been making a living doing that for 20 years, and they're left-handed, typical creative types. And I was like, see, I'm not creative. I'm just a meathead jock. I'm not really creative. So I had to fight through. Even though I was making a living, I still had these insecurities that somebody that really knew what art. I'd been in a group show at the DMA. I'd had 2 solo shows, but still massive insecurities that somebody's gonna come and go like, dude, weren't you supposed to be a basketball coach?
Wow,
You're a meathead.
man.
And I was just like
blowing my mind though. So I mean,
so that's I didn't grow up as a dude. I wasn't drawing.
That's crazy. I mean,
sports, man.
I have a grandmother. She's approaching 100. She's still alive. She makes jewelry. We talked about your bracelet. My little sister, same artist. Always. My little sister from the time she was,
always
I
being
don't know.
creative.
Yes, always working with her hands. She's an amazing artist. My grandmother is as well. But you had no inclinations playing sports.
Yeah.
You take a class, and I mean, if you haven't seen some of this guy's paintings, you will when you go to his website. I mean, they're crazy good, man. I mean, your Andre 3000 one is dope as fuck.
Andre 3000. What is that?
Andre 3000 from Outkast. You've got one of those. Your Johnny
Maybe.
Cash one is extremely badass.
BB King is in there.
Your BB King one is awesome.
Okay.
Didn't you do a Chris Cornell one recently? I'm pretty sure you did.
You're mixing your images, I think.
Chris Cornell Soundgarden? I think you did.
Okay, but I'll take credit for it.
Well, I could be wrong. Maybe
David Bowie. There's David Bowie.
That David Bowie one is awesome. Well, so you start down that path, that creative path. Did you get your degree from UTA?
Yeah, did get a degree in communications.
A lot of artists find it hard sometimes to get a foothold and start making a living because it's hard for them to marry the business side with the creative side.
Yeah.
The artists that I know, several of them do struggle there because they're like, well, I paint because that's my creative outlet. If I start charging money for that, I feel like I lose my integrity. Did you struggle with that at all as you start? I mean, obviously, your foray into it is some gal from Warner Brothers tapping you on the shoulder at a club.
Yeah. No, and that probably paved the way I looked at it. Like I just immediately was like, I got to hustle and get going, and I'm getting paid to do it. So there wasn't as much of like, oh, I'm just I'm painting these images for me. Even the solo shows I had kind of, fell into my lap from somebody saying, man, your stuff in your studio is fantastic. You ever had a show? No. You want to have one? Yeah. Here's the deadline. And so my mind was just already thinking like, all right, I got to have good work. I hope it sells. I got to have a certain number of pieces. How do I price it? So it's interesting the way you said, like, I do know creative people, like it's just an outlet. And then later when I became an entrepreneur, my mind went that way easier. It wasn't like, gee, I don't really understand how, I was already thinking like a hustler, like you got to be scrappy and make shit happen.
Yeah, you've just
your
got
language,
well,
your world.
Like we were talking.
I mean, we know, you got to go. You got to have a motor.
Hey, listen, if you sit around and you wait until the plan is perfect, then you're never going to start.
Totally.
And the best way to get wet's to jump all the way in, man. Just jump in. What will come will come. What will be. And if you're always putting your best effort out there, then usually the results start to, especially if you have a good idea. Obviously, if your concept sucks and it doesn't take shape or doesn't take flight, you got to move on. When we'll talk about your entrepreneurship side, but that's just very interesting because I've always admired your art, but I had no idea that you didn't grow up aspiring to be an artist
about
because
it at all.
Some of the images, some of the things you come up with are amazing. I love art, and I work with my hands and I build things. That's kind of my art. But I've always wanted to be an artist. I guess I haven't really put the time into make creations like this. I know this guy. He's coming on the podcast in a few weeks with that, and the stuff you've done. So that's super interesting. You're having a show at the DMA, you're selling your stuff, you start to, probably sock some money away and then start looking toward maybe starting and building businesses. Can you talk about some of because you've had many ventures. Can you talk about a few of those?
For sure. I want to go back to what you said just even for half a second. Just you touched on a bunch of stuff of the personality of what kind of drives somebody, did you think creatively, or how did you, start navigating this stuff? And something there just made me think about how you've got to just go into it expecting mistakes. And we were, before we got on air, we were talking with your producer, Ryan, with his real estate background, and now he's doing production. And we mentioned this idea of a lean-in personality.
Yeah.
And so that's a big driver for me to be, you're always having to navigate fears. Even if you get to a level of proficiency, when I got a blank canvas and somebody's about to write a decent sized check, I got nerves, and I'm like, okay, do I still know how to do this? So what you touched on just made me think about I think there's a clear delineation between people who they lean in or they lean out. And so when they come up against an obstacle or fear, it overwhelms them, that fear of failure. So if you're really going to play in whatever the game is, entrepreneurship, being an artist, whatever that, because that stuff gets, you're starting to show some vulnerability. Man, that painting's a piece of shit. What? I just spent a week on that's my favorite piece. Well, it can crush you. So if you don't know how to kind of work those fears, and I guess I would even say, we can run down rabbit trail wherever you want, but just that drives me more. Like, have you ever heard of athletes talk about they hate losing more than they care about winning?
Yes.
So I don't want to look like a jackass. I don't want to be, again, talking to your producer, Ryan, I want to do things well. So if I produce output, content, a book, a business, a painting, I do not want it to suck, because I don't want people to be like, oh, dude, you mailed it in. You're a jackass. So anyway, all that stuff is kind of going through my mind, which
Absolutely.
Again, it'll segue to the entrepreneurship too, but go ahead.
Well, and every time I have someone on, I ask them about adversity, because adversity is a real funny thing, and there are people who really run from it, because there's a lot of fear tied up in adversity. Adversity causes anxiety, depression, all those types of things. And I'm no expert, and you could throw a rock in any direction and get some fucking online motivational speaker who's gonna, get you jacked up and fight through adversity.
Yeah.
But for sure, follow me on Instagram first.
Right.
But what I do know from the real world is that the people who I've always found this like immediate kinship with, and that's what I've loved about rugby, is you can tell when you're talking to someone who's not afraid of adversity.
Yeah, man, you know your tribe.
They welcome it. They're like, oh, cool, a problem.
Yes.
Awesome. I can't wait to tackle this, because what's going to come of it is going to be amazing. Yeah. And there's a different way of living when you live that way. And I always try to talk to my guys about that. Hey, if something goes wrong, this is an opportunity. Adversity is an opportunity. So you brought it up. Fear, too. Fear cripples so many people.
Yeah, man.
I'm sure people reach out to you, asking you, but people reach out to me, too. Hey, I want to start a business, but where do I start?
Yes.
You start.
Yes.
That's where you start. Man. You start.
Yeah.
The fear thing, though, I can't even... it seems like the vulnerability of putting a piece of created art out there would be daunting, because what are people going to say? Do you just have you just kind of calloused yourself to that? Like, I don't give a fuck what people think. That's what I was feeling, and that's my creation. Or does it still sting a tad if somebody criticizes you?
I put that mask on that says, I'm calloused to it. But there is a level of,
you are a fucking boxing coach.
Exactly.
So.
Yeah. If push comes to shove, we can throw down. It's funny. But no, you would probably be the same way. You've become proficient at what you do. So I know I'm not going to just put out dog shit. It may not be your cup of tea, like with a painting, that they're like, nah. So I'm at a level where I'm competent and confident enough to go, okay, that's fine. But, it's tapping me on the shoulder all the time of like, ooh, can you still do it?
It was Erykah Badu, not Andre 3000. You've done an Erykah Badu. Have you not?
You got a different artist on here.
What am I doing?
It's okay. But there are faces.
And I interrupted you.
It's
okay.
Sorry. That's all right.
Yeah, so
but I've learned how to,
fight through it.
Yeah, but I love let me touch on that too. When you said, people do regularly. They're like, man, hey, you take risks. You've done a bunch of stuff, whatever. How do you start a business? And I always just say, look, there's no magic to this. You got to wake up and you got to figure it out. How do you write a business plan? Now, sure, once you've done it a few times, or raising capital, whatever that is, but it is all about the hustle and to fight through the fear, and you just got to figure it out and, one step forward, two steps back. I mean, it's all the cliches are there for a reason, but to me, it is so much about waking up and deciding you're going to do it. And the next, when you say, we were talking about, what's his name? Jocko?
Yeah. Jocko Willink.
Yeah.
Yep.
When you see those hurdles, just, and know that, man, when I get through this and I've got fit, like I use that word output.
Mm-hmm.
I want something finished that is tangible. There's my book. There's that painting. Here's this business that has revenue, profits. Knowing what's going to be on the other side of those fears and the obstacles. Once you do that a couple of times and get a couple of good ass kickings, kick in the teeth.
Yeah.
Seriously, I mean, that's the best thing in the world, because then once you pick yourself up, you're like, oh, I can play in this game. Most people are like, I'm out, because they, the failure thing just wrecks them. I'm like, it's a big boy game. You got to get used to it.
Well, if you look at life as a game, I think a lot of people sit on the sidelines and they watch. I mean, that's why social media, in my opinion, is so popular. You watch what other people are doing. Wow, I could never do that. Wow, how did they do that? Wow, amazing. Instead of, man, I'm going to try that.
Yeah.
I mean, you paint paintings, you wrote a book, you start businesses, you go on mission trips, you teach boxing classes, you shot a pilot for a rugby reality TV show. That's how I met you. That's living, that's playing the game. That's not standing on this. That's getting in the arena like Teddy Roosevelt, right? The man in the arena.
The man in the arena. You got to be quoting that twice a week.
All day, brother. Love that one.
It's the most brilliant. I was waiting for you to pause so I could say, do you know Man in the Arena?
100%.
Because so many people are up in the stands throwing grenades at the guy that's bloodied and scarred. And I don't know it word for word, but though I bled and sweat, at least I tried.
Absolutely.
I was the man in the arena.
Who is the critic? Who is the critic?
Yeah,
and that's
so
all.
good.
That's our culture has devolved into such a critical culture where, okay, I'm going to criticize this politician, but am I going to get off my ass and go run for city council? Or am I going to get off my ass and go run for comptroller or railroad commission or something and make a difference? No, because it's easy and
much
it's
easier
convenient.
to stay on social media and blast at somebody.
And lob,
right?
yeah, to be a paper tiger. And to never actually get out there, to be a keyboard warrior, who, wow, you really string together some awesome paragraphs, but what the fuck have you ever done in your life?
Yeah.
And living a life that's fulfilled, it obviously comes down to the liver of that life, right? Mm-hmm. But, when you're actually out there and you are risking things, you are risking your feelings or your vulnerability or your financial future sometimes if you take a business risk. Yeah. Talk about some of that.
Well, man, I mean, what always comes to mind is just have taken the risk and how many have failed of the companies that have started, and it's $1.3 million of investor capital, and I've returned money to a couple of people. So fight through that at 3 a.m., and keep doing it. So something you said in there, I don't know, it all goes back to the, are you going to keep fighting? Or are you going to walk away from it? But,
well, what are you afraid of? What are you afraid of in life? Do you have, I'm afraid of failing. Yeah. I'm afraid that at the end of it, they'll say, well, he just played it safe.
Man, I love that. I'm going to steal that. So, but even when you said a life well lived, to me, it's got to be this, we want it to just be this, uptick to the right.
Yes, we do.
And that's kind of a Western America, bootstrap it and make, actually, I take that back. I'm all about the bootstrap. But I believe that you've got to have the adversity and the pain. And that's even on the faith-based side, the Lord uses pain to grow us up, to change courses for us. So all that stuff is tied into it. But again, just, having to take the chance to start those businesses. And yes, fear of failure is absolutely in there. But it's that last thing you said that I don't want to get to the end. I do believe we end up in front of the Lord and he does some sort of measure and he just goes, hey, I don't want him to go like, man, you didn't really max it out. I want to be bloodied and scarred. And he's like, man. Well done, faithful servant. You got after it.
Absolutely.
And it's going to have to be. It may not have a bunch of zeros in the bank at all. Doesn't matter though. But it's like, well, you crushed it. You went hard. That's the thing that drives me.
Yeah, and you've obviously pitched to venture capitalists, angel investors, some really successful financial people. I know some of the folks you rub shoulders with. I won't name drop, but I mean, some of them are movers and shakers in our city. We've talked about that. If you ask them, did you learn more from those wild successes or from the failures? All of them, to a man or woman, say the failures taught me the most.
Absolutely.
You talk a lot about, and you are a faith-based guy, and ever since we've always talked and debated and gone back. We have lively debates when we talk. And in your book, you talk about that, about being measured at the end. Life. Talk about your opinions about religion and spirituality. That's a huge topic. That's a polarizing topic, but it is what it is. When did you start your spiritual journey? Is that something you started as a kid?
Great question. And I'll even marry it back to, talking about the art or business stuff, like people standing on the sidelines being apathetic. Big driver of the book was just that sort of apathy towards, we have a deadline here. We're all everybody in this room, we're going to check out 100%. Nobody gets out alive. And I had so many conversations with people just acting like, I don't really sweat it. And I'd kind of push on them a little bit. And I'll answer your question about how the faith thing started. But, just sort of, you're a driven guy. If you were apathetic about the next project that you're working on business-wise, of course you're not going to live that way. Well, here's the most important thing. You're going to die. So work backward. You got to think about that in some way. We'll go down that in a second. But to answer your question, no, I didn't grow up Christian household. I thought religion was a bunch of horse shit for weak people. I was like, I don't need that stuff. And then so I didn't become I use the word because everybody in Dallas is a Christian. Yeah. So I say Christ follower. Right. Like in a
buckle of the Bible belt, bro.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
A lot of people.
Christ follower. Yeah. I like that.
Well, I mean, it's, because you can check the box. Which one am I going to pick here? Well, none of the above. Yeah, okay. I grew up. I went to church some. I'm a Christian. Well, I didn't grow up in it. So I was 32, Friday, October 22nd, 1999. And I used a metaphor like God grabbed me in a headlock and said, really? You're coming with me. I wasn't looking for him. I'll just give you the Cliff Notes version. So I was dating a gal. We had broken up. Another dude had come into the picture and swept her off her feet. So, of course, I'm like, wait, hold on. Now I think I'm in love with you because you got another fella. And so we just went out and we're having a conversation. And we were in my car. I still remember we were off of Lower Greenville just sitting, and not even a big emotional conversation, boohoo, and none of that stuff. But I remember telling her, I was like, yeah, Kelly, man, I wonder if I made a mistake here and we could have had, more of a future. And I had my hand on the console, and she put her hand on mine, and she said, don't worry, it's going to be all right. Nonchalant. And shit you not, I felt like my funny bone had gotten hit, like a little jolt. This is the story. Again, didn't buy into any of this stuff. So I'm driving home that night. We kind of finished the conversation. She's not even she kind of checked the box as a Catholic. She wasn't this hardcore Jesus gal preaching to me or anything. I drive home that night to Deep Ellum, and I still remember, I'm like, I got this warm, peaceful feeling. What's that about? Am I in love with her? It wasn't. I was like, no, I've been in love. This is different. So for the next 2 or 3 days, this is the way I describe it. Like you've got a craving for sushi or pizza or a hamburger. It's on your mind. All of a sudden, C.S. Lewis, that name? Mm-hmm. Big heavyweight British theologian.
Absolutely.
He's in my mind, and I'm like, why am I thinking about C.S. Lewis? All I knew is he was some atheist guy that had become a Christian. So I reached out to a buddy of mine that I knew was a born-again, I say the word Jesus freak, born-again Jesus freak guy. I go, David, man, I had a weird thing happening, and I'm not sure what's going on, but I've got C.S. Lewis in my mind. Do you know anything about him? He goes, yeah, man, I'm going to send you a book.
Did he send you Shadowlands?
I read that's great.
Yeah?
He sent me Mere Christianity,
Okay. Yeah,
which is this
wow.
heavyweight apologetics book. And
Yeah.
if people don't know what apologetics just means, you're defending
Right.
something, and
Yep.
usually it's related to religion. So it leveled me. So
Really?
again, to go back to your question, if you would have met me, I always say this: if you would have met when people. Part of the impetus for the book is that people go, well, you probably grew up in all this stuff. You're
Yeah.
a Texas guy, Bible Belt. And I'm like, no. If you would have met me 2 weeks before, I would have said all the stuff that I'm saying in my book. Organized religion is hypocritical, all the bullshit. I don't want it. And then all of a sudden, it's what I tell people now is like, if you have an encounter with Christ, whether it's Road to Damascus,
Oh, I was just
Paul,
going to say.
in the
Yeah.
New Testament, that stuff resonates with me. Where I'm like, I thought it was all tooth fairy stuff,
Yeah.
Santa Claus stuff.
Donkeys talking.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that 22 years ago, started me on my journey.
Crazy.
And so, again, didn't grow up in it, didn't buy into it. But again, when you have that encounter, and I still wrestle with things, still have lots of doubts. I talk about it in the book, but I go back to that sort of thing where I know the exact, and I know plenty of people that go, man, I wish I would have had something like that, because I can't deny, like if somebody, and actually I think the logic does add up at the end of the day, but if there's things, you look out in the world and you go, man, it's really fucked up. There's a lot of bad shit happening. You're telling me this God person, Christ guy loves people? Not buying it. Well, I wrestle with that. But I always go back to like, man, I was going this direction, and Saturday morning, 1999, after October, I was going a different direction, and it's never stopped. So I'm either delusional, you know what I mean,
Yeah.
or this shit is real. I mean, that's exactly what I tell people.
Should we ask Kelly if you're delusional? See what she
here's the
says?
thing. No, good memory. So I went back to her.
Yeah.
And like a couple months later, and I said, hey, when we were talking that night, and I didn't want to lead her down a path, I just go, did you feel anything? Like I was hoping she'd say like, yes, I love you, and you're the greatest man ever. She didn't say that.
Right?
She
sorry,
said when
bro.
she put my hand, she goes, yeah, I felt something too. And I was like, wow, but it didn't grab her, which is what's fascinating, and so and that's the mystery of God. I mean, I know plenty of people that have had some crazy shit happen, and I'm like, well, where's God in that? Don't know, don't care. So anyway,
Very
so
interesting.
So the background, not Christian
there.
household, none of that stuff.
What do you think that moment did to the direction and trajectory of your life? What, obviously, you've been on numerous double-digit mission trips, and you give back a lot. We'll talk about some of the work that you do to help men who are starting their life over. But what do you, if you could distill that into a couple of paragraphs, what did that moment do to your life, and how do you think it changed it for the better or the worse, maybe? Probably the better is what you'll say.
Yeah. Nah, man, that's a great question. I mean, it certainly has not made it easier. And I think there's some illusion or delusion there that you think, hey, man, now I got God on my side if this stuff's real. And won't I get the pony? Won't I get the pot of gold at
Where's
the end of
the
the rainbow?
rainbows? Yeah,
it's
brother.
Like, no, doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
But let's see, if I said, what is it? I think it definitely changed me. I was on this trajectory of going to be on the hamster wheel of go hard, success, material, going down that path, and already recognizing like, is that what I want? But I mean, in our city, it's a go city, big time. And again, I'm not in any way. I mean, work.
That's how we keep score here.
Yeah.
Yep.
But it would be, that's a perfect way to put it.
Yep.
It would have been like keeping score of the comparison game. What's the car? How big's the house? And so even, I appreciate what you said. I mean, I just look at how much, and I'll use this, is going to sound all churchy and religious, like the term, the kingdom of God, like where God operates, is so upside down compared to the world. So where it changed dramatically is how much, I'm talking even in the last year, and I touched on, where I started working at this really cool nonprofit called Men of Nehemiah in the last month that helps guys that have been homeless and been incarcerated. Well, I love that kind of grit, but God, the way he works, he's so changed me where it's like, that's all I want to, I'll sacrifice my agenda now because I want to help others. Well, that's how, to answer your question, And that's not an overnight thing, but it's this dramatic evolution of kind of living out, if I'm going to be following this Christ dude, there better be a lot of people going, man, thank you to me, because I'm dropping my agenda to help them. So that's the part, like you kind of get off the hamster wheel, the success wheel, still fight that stuff, still care about it, still want to do things well. But now it's all about how can I impact lives, which sounds so borderline, cheesy, douchey, but it is. It's the real deal.
Well,
just your mindset's different.
Yeah. The thing in the book that you talk about, there's one chapter especially where you talk a lot about Deepak Chopra, and you talk about the New Age movement, and you hear a lot. There's such a mishmash of salad bar theology and philosophy to life now, right?
Yeah.
Like,
pick what you want.
So I'm going to live my life based on what inspirational email I got from some guy who sells supplements and is really good at, doing motivational scream at me speeches, or am I going to live my life by what I see on somebody's Instagram? You know what I'm saying? Because everybody's putting inspirational stuff out there. Or is there a solid baseline that rules the way that I live my life? Now, we were talking in the back about politics, which we won't get into today because it's a waste of time. But it's just hard to, it seems to me, find people who have substance to them these days.
Wow.
Because I think maybe if you sat them down at an interrogation table and you shine the bright light on them and you said, by what convictions do you live your life? Could they come back at you with anything that even resembled, an articulate
conviction? Do you stand for something?
Right.
Yeah.
That seems like something that you're very passionate about. I mean, you wrote a book about it. There's a lot of people who talk about writing books. I want to write one. I never have. How long did it take you to get this together and put it together?
So, this is right up your alley when people go like, how do you do that stuff?
Yeah.
It's just like, well, you see this elbow grease, you see this sweat, that kind of stuff. So it was, once I decided I was going to do it, 5 nights a week, usually 5:30 to 7, took my iPhone, set the timer for an hour, and turned it over and made myself write. First it's an outline. I'm a decent communicator, but I'm dealing with fears of I'm like, wow, I'm going to put a book together. I hope I don't sound stupid. So I want to write like I'm a smart guy. Well, then that sounds like dog shit. And it's like, that's not my voice at all. So you're fighting through that stuff. But the main thing was like, even if I'm like, I got nothing to say, I would write, I have nothing to say. There's nothing coming out. Well, as you keep doing that and make yourself, it's the discipline piece. I got to do this every night. So it took about 6 weeks. And again, it's a short read. It's 200 pages. But, you got to crank it out. And then you got to start piecing it together and make some sort of, cohesive narrative. But it is like anything, as you know, it's not, well, I just waited until I felt like, I got a couple of friends that are talking about writing books. I'm like, where are you on it? And they've been working on it for 3 or 4 years. Send me a chapter. Well, they got to set that timer.
Yeah.
Because anytime when you read dudes that are killing it, Stephen King, they still, the discipline, they write for whatever the thing is, but they do it every day,
Absolutely.
So again,
Stephen King would, he would set the timer, and then he would medically dose himself with alcohol and cocaine.
I was going to say cocaine
and just
was
start writing.
Yeah.
But he was like medical
well.
about that.
Yeah.
That's crazy. The lots of the quotes in the book would indicate to me that you're a big reader. Is that pretty true? You kind of have this voracious appetite. You're reading, or is it just you're finding things in passing and making notes about those that, hey, that I like that, I'm going to use that someday? Or how did you kind of come up with all those in the book? Because each chapter, at least most of them, start with a notable quote.
Yeah, man, dude, you're all over it. That's great. So a little bit of both. Do like to read a ton. It's just like, you're a fitness guy working out. Got to exercise the brain, and I can feel it when it's getting mushy. So do like to read. I do like quotes quite a bit. So it's a combination of both. I don't know if I'd say, I like the word voracious. I'll go ahead and tell you, because you and I were talking about how, strength comes through vulnerability.
Yeah.
Well, one of those insecurities that led to vulnerability, is thinking that I'm not bright. And all through college, through my 20s, just kind of having this insecurity about I'm just not very smart, which drove me to reading. And it's a double-edged sword there of I like reading, but it's also this insecurity of like, oh, I got to catch up because I'm not a smart guy. If I meet some dude that's graduate degrees, PhD, Ivy League stuff, I'm like, oh, he's naturally gifted. Well, I better go do some more reading so I can catch up.
Interesting.
So it's a good driver, but it's also, there's some stuff of like, well, I feel like I've got to have more knowledge.
Sure.
And even when I said earlier, it's like I don't want to sound like an idiot. If I'm going to put myself and I'm going to start defending this dude that I believe in, I better have, there's plenty of people that could probably out-argue me, but I know the argument and I don't want to sound like a jackass.
I got you.
Yeah.
What is, it is something that success coaches, life coaches will tell people. Most millionaires will tell you they read 50 books a year. What does reading do for you? Because I read a lot.
Yeah.
I try to read more than, and I try to be disciplined about it too, because it's very easy for me to just flip the tube on and catch some hoops or some rugby or
you
some
feel like
on
you can
Netflix.
tell the difference? Sorry to interrupt you. Like I can tell when I'm reading, the exercise of that compared to, I mean, even name something really good, a good, Sopranos, Breaking Bad, Mad Men, you name it, really well-produced content. The book is going to challenge you more, in my opinion.
Totally agree. I grew up listening to the radio.
Okay.
So didn't grow up with a ton of TV. So we would listen to stories on the radio, which is very similar to, reading an audiobook, something like that. Your imagination is then forced to fill in all of the colors and shade in all the shadows. So for sure, I feel sharper. I feel like my mind is firing.
Perfect.
Just like you do when you're, training, all week for a match or 2 months for a fight.
Yeah.
You're ramping up.
Yes.
And then I can tell when I've taken a break from reading. I didn't read for a long time because I had so many concussions. I would get dizzy when I would read.
Oh wow.
And so now I've been able to find a way around that. But yeah, I think reading is super important. And like my mom, this is how my parents are both educators. My mom reads, like she'll have 5 books going at a time, right?
Yeah.
She'll read one book super heavy and then she'll pick a different one up. That's like her commercial.
Nice. I love that.
It's crazy.
That's a great, and I would say the same thing. There's stuff, I'll use the word that's dense, where it's like, okay, that's a big bite. I need something lighter, to kind of, that I'm just kind of, okay, good. But I love the analogy. I feel like you said this of, you can tell when you're not working out, your body doesn't feel right. Well, I've got to have that content coming in, and it's got to be, now this is biased, but it's got to be substantive, where it's challenging.
Right.
I mean, even when you said the quote, the Man in the Arena quote, that's an excerpt from a much longer, you probably know the history of it, from 1908 or 1910, Sorbonne in Paris. Mm-hmm. But that little chunk, that bite, is some satisfying sustenance. So
that's a fillet for sure, man.
Perfect,
no doubt.
Yeah.
And I mean, he was responding, Teddy Roosevelt, for those of you who don't know who we're talking about, he was flipping the middle finger, man. He was like, we make national parks and a highway system over here. What do you do?
Yeah. Well, what I love about it so much is, Rough Rider, the guy he lived a
greatest
big,
president, probably.
Iconic life. But in that excerpt says so much about it's okay to fail. Wow. You're like, dude, that's why it's so timeless.
Right.
So I love it. I shouldn't be surprised at all that you knew it. But I know tons of people, they're like, wow, man, I've never heard that before. And it's like, you need to get it tattooed because it's so good.
It is. It is awesome. I mean, you like, I'll keep coming back to the art thing when you put yourself out there like that. So this is a piece of art, the book.
Absolutely.
And then obviously the illustrated piece of art.
I even look at business that way.
I agree.
I look at it through a creative lens.
I think that's interesting.
Yeah. So to me, it is still, you're piecing together, or even, again, we were talking with your producer, Ryan, about what is, he asked, am I kind of a, guy that gets into the gear, and I use like a producer and a director a lot of times as a quarterback. So I still piece it together as a creative endeavor, even though it's about P&L and marketing and all that stuff,
right.
But it's still, to me, it's a creative endeavor, and that's just the way I view it.
Absolutely. The living a busy life, I think, is important.
Busy, or I would say productive, but go ahead. Sorry.
No, I
Keep
think
going.
I think that's an in there. Yeah, I think that's
A
interesting.
lot of people are busy.
You're right.
Yeah.
You're right. And they don't get much done.
Yeah.
Living a productive life.
It's a
Actually,
fear-based thing. Sorry, man. I'm keeping.
No. We're just chopping it up, brother. Like we're drinking some pints.
Where are those, by the
I know.
way?
Ryan's got some in the fridge. I mean, if you want some. Yeah, you could drink
Man, if you
straight
had
from the
Belgian
bottle.
ale, I'd be all over. I'm not a. Y'all are vodka guys. We need some brown
Ryan
liquor.
is. Ryan, we're trying to help.
Brown
Intervention
liquor, man.
time.
Yes.
Brown liquor.
But thank you for the offer. Go ahead.
That productive life, obviously, you've got a ton of irons in the fire. How do you balance everything? And do you do that consciously? Or are you like, man, I've been going a little hard on this business building stuff. I need a break. I need maybe not a vacation, but I need a little
trip.
more. See? Yeah.
Yeah,
that's
man,
kind of why I
it's
was leading you down that path. Okay. Right on.
No, it is. I mean, is there balance? I mean, I've got a decent idea of when I'm fatigued and not being productive, with the output. The mission trip stuff is always a way to kind of recalibrate the compass, for sure, especially living in shiny, Dallas, I call it Disneyland,
Yeah.
It's all make-believe. Well, just the money makes it seem like make-believe. So it's healthy for me. I don't do well on going to the beach, drinking a margarita. I do like like the booze, like brown liquor and good beers and wine.
Yeah, right.
But I want to go do something like did a trip to Haiti, where we did a housing solution thing after the big earthquake in 2010. Well, you come back and you're fatigued from that work, and it's so out of your comfort zone. You don't have any of the accoutrements, if that's the right word.
Accoutrements. Yes,
thank
absolutely.
you. When you're in a third world country, but that stuff, I come back and it recharges me. So, answer your question. It's sort of a ongoing battle of balancing and knowing like, oof, but I also like, again, the drive that I want to get a lot of shit done.
Yeah.
And I like having a lot of irons in the fire and making sure that they're not halfway, that they get finished.
What is, when you go on those trips, what does coming face to face with actual real human suffering and abject poverty do
Just
to
gonna say the word, man.
to your way of looking at the world? Because we do live in a very glitzy metropolitan. I mean, it's it's right up there. There's not a lot of grit or soul in Dallas. I like Dallas, but it's it's not Boston or New York or New Orleans.
Yeah,
it's
New
a lot
Orleans is
closer.
gritty in a great way.
It's a lot closer. Even St. Louis or Memphis. It's a lot closer to L.A. than it is any of those others. What is coming across? I mean, you've worked on with the Mercy ships, people.
Yeah,
I mean,
man,
you're
great memory.
seeing just the lowest of the low human suffering. What's that do for your worldview?
Dude, that's a great effing question. No, it is, seriously. Well, it rocks me. So I think a lot of times what I hear people, and this is where I get pissed off, I'll hear people go, man, doesn't that just make you count your blessings?
No.
I'm like, fuck no, man. It makes me go, number one, it makes me question the Lord. Like, how does this all work? I didn't have anything to do with being born, in the United States. I mean, I'll say kind of stuff, white, not a minority, parents together, straight guy, all the stuff that can beat you down if you don't have those boxes checked. Well, I didn't have anything to do with that. You go to another country and you see these folks that are just abject poverty is the perfect word, where it's like, they're a recent trip. I'll jump tracks for a second to Haiti 2 years ago. We helped these guys that the Haitian term is called bayaku, and they're latrine cleaners. So I read this article, NPR article, that was about the challenges of getting clean water in Haiti. Halfway down the article, it had a subheading that said the worst job in the world. It was 2 paragraphs about these guys called bayakus. And I'd already been to Haiti before after the earthquake. So this is 2018. And I read, and there was these guys that were climbing. They had a couple of pictures. They climbed down where, where people are going to the bathroom, taking a dump, and they're having to clean that for $3.80 a night. They primarily do it naked just because they don't want all the stuff all over them. And then they're outcasts because of the job they're doing. So it moved. I was like, fuck. I've been there before. I can do something. I want to go help those dudes. So we put together a GoFundMe thing. We raised $7,000. Got them a bunch of hazmat suits, goggles to help them. Back to your question, you're still down there when you face to face with these guys. And they were even, I had a Haitian buddy go down there. You got boots on the ground to help navigate all that stuff. And because they're so outcast, they were like, we're here to help. You know, we were coming down, and they didn't want. No, we're not the Baiku. We're engineers. They didn't want to even, because it's such a horrible job to have. But once we were like, remember, we were coming here to help you. Then we kind of broke that barrier. But the bigger my worldview gets impacted, you just kind of go, I don't understand how you. I do get the theology of this is a broken world, and that answers a shit ton of stuff. If you can ask any of the questions of like, why are people evil? Why are they mean? Why do wars happen? Why do hurricanes happen? You may not like the answer, but it is original sin. The Bible has the strongest answer for the origin of why bad shit happens. Okay? Some real heavy theology in there. It still makes it very hard to watch somebody go, why is that guy getting shit on and he has zero chance? Same Cuba. Been to Cuba a couple times. People were like, wow, we're stuck here. We can hop on a plane and jet set over to Paris if we want, wherever we want. They are stuck on an island. So my worldview gets impacted on a bunch of different levels, and it's not always, it's that I want to do more. And then I also shake my fist and say, what the fuck, God? What is this? I don't understand all this. And it makes me doubt, makes me question all my faith and and again, the Bible's not full of, I think, there's some platitude verses in there, but there's some hard shit in there too. And you're like, okay, got to read the hard shit also. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So it affects your worldview. And I want that. I want a meaty faith. I don't want a bunnies and sunshine, Joel Osteen, everybody gets rich. And
fuck that,
God,
man.
I mean, all that kind of nonsense.
It's trash.
Like, that's what turns people away. I'm like, hey, man, let's have some real conversations about, and then again, you may not like it, but I've got some really good, and this is answers I'm getting from much smarter theologians of why Christ is such a fascinating character. But go ahead. What were you going to say?
Well, theologians are theologians, and they can talk about it, and it might sound fancy, and it might make sense to other theologians, but you and I deal, in the world, in the real world where the rubber meets the road. I would imagine that these mission trips that you've gone on have not only broadened your, faith, because if your faith's not growing, it's dying. And
Great
part
point,
of your faith growing is doubting and asking and seek and ye shall find, knock and the door shall be opened unto you. Seek is not passive. Knock is not passive. It's
great.
It's I want to know. I want to lean in. Those changes to your worldview, have those been the impetus for some of these businesses, some of these ventures that you've undertaken that are helping, especially men, start their lives over?
Yeah, man. Yeah, for sure. So I think there's a tendency, when you're a new Christian, new Christ follower, you're kind of siloing things, putting them in buckets. And for a long time, it was like, okay, I got my business stuff.
Yeah.
I've got this other bucket over here. It's the church thing or the service thing. And slowly you want to close those gaps, in my opinion. And so to me, it's like, it doesn't have to be this way. This is just my own subjective opinion. Like I wanted to, the businesses I've done have had some sort of give back component. Now, again, a lot of them, have failed revenue wise, but they're always started with this idea of like, okay, it can't be this separate thing that doesn't have any kind of, if you want to say community outreach or whatever. But even, like the current one we were talking about, there's, this company I've got now, a teeny little thing called Bin Sense where we clean trash bins.
Yeah.
But we hire, our full-time guy is part of what's called fantastic. I love having the chance to promote it, the Prison Entrepreneurship Program. He's a graduate, which it's basically like the TV show Shark Tank, but for guys that are incarcerated. And we need to get you involved. So executives go inside 2 different prisons in Texas, 9-month program. The guys are learning how to write a business plan, and they end up in front of executives pitching their business plan. And I'm talking about they're starting off at the first part not having a clue, even their writing skills or, what a profit and loss, what is that? What is revenue? And by the end of 9 months, it's a program that's the Baylor School of Business gives them a certification degree from Baylor for them to do that. But anyway, I don't want to get too off track, but hiring, that's important to me to give those guys a chance. And that circles back to you realize like, man, I did not deserve all the stuff that just randomly or God orchestrated it that gave me a leg up. Because all these dudes to a T, and even that new organization that I said I work for now, Men of Nehemiah, those are guys that have been homeless, that have been incarcerated to a T. Dad's not in the picture. Real young age, 12, 13 years old. Who'd you first find attention or, fatherly love? Gang members.
Yeah.
So,
drug trade.
When you see all that stuff, instead of me casting aspersions, they're like, well, you need to get your shit together. When you've heard the narrative and you get into the mix with them and the grit, if you're not developing empathy that affects your business, your worldview, all those things should be tied together. I don't know what's going on there. You know what I mean?
I do, man.
I run around with too many people who I'll put it on the shelf of ignorance that they say these generalizations about those people just need to get a job. They need to do this or that. I'm like, do you know anything about their background?
Do you know anything about the fact that our American society is the most incarcerated society per capita on the face of the planet in the history of the fucking planet?
Yeah. I mean, 13th maybe.
Yes, and it's crazy, and that's a mission trip that you take in and of itself when you go talk to those guys who, again, had no shot.
Perfect. No chance.
And
when you hear their story, how handicapped they were.
Well, and then our criminal justice answer to all of that is just to warehouse these men.
Yeah, man.
And that's complete bullshit.
Yeah.
And and
I so appreciate you saying that.
If you can look in the mirror as a society and say, we're doing a good job when all you do is warehouse people, I think you are delusional. Yeah. And it's crazy to see some of the wrongful convictions being overturned now, Innocence Project, things like that, where people weren't given a fair shot. Our justice system is completely rigged. In fact, our economy is in many ways rigged. Big business runs the show. I watched a movie. I was on a flight yesterday back from Atlanta. I watched a movie with Mark Ruffalo called Deep Water, and it's about this attorney who fought DuPont. And I wept.
Oh, wow.
On the plane. I had my own row, so I wasn't embarrassed. But I was telling somebody about that. It moved me. Like, there's a story in the Bible. It's called David and Goliath. And it wouldn't be a story if it was David and David. If David killed David, no one would give a fuck. David killed Goliath.
Yeah.
And if you've got a fight in your life, you got something you're up against, keep fighting. Right?
Love it,
I mean, I think that the criminal justice reform that politicians love to weaponize and politicize, it's got to happen somehow. But you're doing something instead of just saying, "Oh, look, that's terrible. Ooh, injustice. Injustice anywhere means injustice everywhere," or whatever that term is. No,
man,
you're fucking doing something about it, man. You're in the stream of life. And you're actually doing something. Have you ever read the book Siddhartha? It's about you should read it. I know you're a Christ follower, and it's a book about Buddhism. But it's crazy how it talks about life as a river, right? It's just a flowing river.
Sure.
It's not okay. I'm here in my life. I'm there in my life. I'm here in my life. I'm there in my life. It's life is flowing, and I'm in it. And whatever happens is happening for a reason.
Rapids, whatever. I mean,
waterfalls, with rocks at the bottom.
It's a great analogy because you can go also to the pond with still water that just stagnates. Or I've heard those sorts of river flowing metaphors of like rocks, if you go, rocks in a pond are jagged and sharp, but the ones that have been beat up by water get smoothed. You know, there's a purpose to all those things. So, man,
absolutely,
I'm all about that. I wanted to say, when you were talking about, I appreciate you saying that, like, even, you know, in the big political things, I mean, I'll pay attention to some of that, but I always have to, you know, narrow it down to the individual. All the politics are relevant when you were saying, like, you know, Mark Ruffalo going against the big corporation. And again, I just always want to drill it down to, like, okay, is there anything I can do to move the needle and make a difference in that? And I go back to the first time I went to Haiti, where it was 2010. We delivered these containers that look like train cars, and we
shipping containers,
and turn those into homes. We did 5 of them. Now, the Haitian earthquake in 2010 killed 250,000 people in 40 seconds.
That's unbelievable.
And when you go and you see how corrupt and wackadoo Haiti is, you're just like, fuck, man, I'm out of this. It's so, but you're just like, no. We're going to help 5 families have a home that will last for the next 70 years. That's it. So the systemic stuff is above my pay grade, and I don't get into, like, well, what are they doing? You know, if you try to send money down there, they're going to steal all of it. It's like, well, I'm still just trying to help this person.
Right.
You know? So something you said in there about that just made me trigger. You know, when it gets into the big, you know, Ruffalo going against, in that movie, the corporate stuff, I guess my mind goes to greed and power, and my worldview is trying to not have that kind of stuff. Less me, more for you. Less of me, more of Christ, you know, which is classic biblical stuff. Get out of the way so he can work through me.
Yeah, and he's in that movie. I didn't mean to make this a movie review, but he is he's an attorney who works for these big chemical companies.
And, is he defending them?
And then he was. And then he has a farmer who he grew up going to this guy's farm. And the farmer his animals start getting sick, and so his grandmother tells the farmer, go talk to my son. He's a big lawyer in Dayton, Ohio, Cincinnati, Ohio. I don't know. That's how it starts.
Okay.
And it's a 15 or 20-year journey. Tim Robbins is in the movie as well,
Wow.
Anne Hathaway as well, of him fighting on behalf of this lowly farmer who's like, something's not right. I don't know what it is. I'm a farmer. You know, life, when you boil it down, there are very, very few people who stand at a pulpit or on a, you know, political stump and give these great, you know, pieces of oratory that everyone stands back and applauds, whether it's Joel Osteen or, you know, Trump or Biden or just whoever. If you see life differently as, you know what, I live one life, and I'm going to affect as many people as I can affect, then that brings your life into perspective of, okay, I want to have a good year. That means I have to have 52 good weeks. That means I have to have the next 5 to 7 days. I need to make a difference. Talk about how setting goals has helped you keep things on track and progressing, and not just staying busy, but staying productive.
Dude, listening as well, hearing all that. So yeah, I mean, it's easy to be busy, you know, and not doing, you know, getting anywhere with it.
Aren't a lot of people busy so they don't have to think about abject poverty?
Totally. What's a
the
numbing out?
system?
It's a fear-based thing.
Yes,
Let me just
blotting
stay
it out.
busy. Yeah, and just kind of, you know, and that can manifest in the next vacation. Boozing too much. Not that vacations are bad, not that booze is bad. You know what I mean? But anyway,
I do.
To me, busyness hides anything where it's like you're not being effective. There's got to be some anxiety, some fear in there, whatever's going on there. But to answer your question, yeah, you know, benchmarks of it isn't like each year I want to try to do a mission trip solely, like I said, to recalibrate the compass. But I like what you said of working backwards. I don't really think of it like, you know, I'm all about deadlines, but the 52-week thing, I don't know if I'm looking at it that way. But I do know I don't want to have years where I'm like, where I look back and go, well, I didn't get anything. There's nothing to show. Yeah. You know? So the measures of, you know, there's internal spiritual things, or again, I want it to be, I mean, this is sound like a stupid one, but it's, am I praying more for other people? Yeah. Well, I'm a voracious, I text prayers to people.
Wow.
Part of that is because I don't like, you know, this is a whole other issue. I don't like to pray for myself.
You sent some to me before.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I've forgotten, but I'm glad I did.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm measuring that, and the benchmark is, are my goggles facing outward. Now I've got another book that's a couple of months from being published. So that's a thing I want to get done. But even that, it's going to be it's not really a follow-up to I'm Not Hitler, but it's a devotional, but it's a pushing people to think about faith. So the measure is always, you want to have a productive year. I love when you say that kind of stuff, absolutely. And, I'm smart enough to know that it's okay. Well, that means the clock's ticking. So that, for me, that's the kind of stuff, I'm 53. My dad died when he was 79. I mean, I'm going to die at 79, but I go, that's like 20-something years, man. And I'm past, I'm not 26 where you're like, I got plenty of time to figure this out. So all that stuff creates an urgency. You got to be, I want to measure it, make sure it's not just, just stay busy. I don't think it's more like, okay, I want to be really effective. And then to even parse it into, okay, but what really matters? Now, you can really argue that stuff. People are like, well, look, man, take care of my family. I want to do this. I want to do a good job. All well and fine. So I guess for me personally, it's just, I just want it, my measure is always going to be, did it impact? Did it have any kind of moving the needle? So even when I said that, where it sounds silly, like, texting a prayer to somebody, because I don't want to be a douchebag Christian that goes, yeah, man, I'll pray for you. And then they never do. I'm like, when you got a digital record of it, and it forces me to think about you. Or am I just going to say something like, hey, Jess, I hope God's with you today. Amen. Blah. No, I'm going to think about, hey, man, what's going on? How's your sister doing? How's Lindsay doing, right? That's fiance. Yeah. What do you guys need prayer about? So all those things are you focused and getting me out of my own navel gazing.
Right.
It's that kind of measure. Long-winded way to answer your question, but it's that kind of brass tack stuff.
In the land of mega churches where we live here, in the buckle of the Bible Belt, where do you feel like faith and where religion and just the glitz and the glam, where do you feel like it all falls short around here? Because I see a lot of it, and I don't want to be the critic on the sideline whose opinion doesn't matter, because good for those guys. If they're running huge churches, I'm sure that they are putting together great big mission organizations. But, some of them are flying on private jets, living in houses, fit for an NBA player. What are you seeing in terms of where the rubber isn't meeting the road? Where you got a lot of people who say one thing, but they live differently. Don't you think it's really how many of your own needs, desires, wants, goals are you putting to the side to help someone else? Don't you think it kind of comes down to that?
Totally. You can't say it any better than that. Like, I would probably not pick on the churches. There are some, to your point, it's like, wow, man, big fleet of cars and the private jet, do you need that stuff? But I go more towards the individual, what's the individual here you go, this is the way I would say it, is the individual looking at God as their executive assistant to help them achieve their goals and live the big life. Yeah. And we're all guilty of that. I mean, I'm guilty of that, of like, am I driving this car or is God driving the car now? So that's where I go, where I see and I'll go this route. People on the outside that think it's all a bunch of bullshit, that we're all hypocrites, which we are.
Well, we're humans.
Yeah, we're human, but that's part of it. Part of it, and I'll toss that right back at people. I'm like, we all are, but so are you. Remember that. Yeah. It's not just us. It's every person is broken and fucked up.
Yes.
I get it that we've checked this box that, and I don't even say that. I don't know if you're a Christ follower, you're supposed to be a better person. I don't even know that, because you're still messed up. But you should be a lot more patient, gracious, empathetic. Your life should look different. Where people fall, again, I go at where people fall short that's the stuff that bugs me. If you're really bought into what the biblical narrative said, that there is this guy who's proven historical figure. It's like, you don't doubt, did George Washington live?
Right.
Yes. Napoleon? Yes. Christ is real. He's not this made up figure. If what he really did is true, we owe him big time. Big time. And I don't even like the word sin. If he erased all my past mistakes, the ones I made today, all the egregious ones I'm going to make tomorrow, and if that's all true, Well, I don't want to mail it in for that. Now, that's an ongoing work in progress. You know what I mean?
I do.
But that's the stuff that eats my lunch, where people are like, yeah, well-meaning, but just not quite getting it, and it's still all about them, and a lot of times doing it in the name of this guy that was completely not about himself.
True.
You know? So
you mentioned Napoleon. There's a quote in the book. Napoleon talked about, I believe, himself, Genghis Khan, Alexander the Great, and Jesus, right? And he said something along the lines
Boy,
of,
now I haven't read my book
we
in a while.
all, you haven't read your own book in a
while.
We all, you know, for lack, I'm just paraphrasing. We were all crusaders, but only one of us conquered with love.
Oh, yeah. That is Napoleon. Yes.
And that's crazy.
Yes.
For him to be so like you said, no, Jesus is not a doubted historical figure. Everyone says, no, this is someone who, and while Jesus was a man and he overturned the tables of the money changers in the temple, which is, growing up as an all-American boy who loved,
getting rowdy.
Yeah, I thought that was awesome.
That's pretty
especially
cool.
The illustrations in a couple of the Bibles my parents gave me. But yeah, man, love is it's here we are, two macho guys talking about what does life really mean. And does life really,
You're
it all...
the macho guy. I just want to be like you.
You're the boxing coach. I don't even...
Pretty boy boxing.
I don't even put that on my resume. Yeah, that's on your resume, man. Come on, brother. It's just interesting. Obviously, we're waxing very philosophical and very esoteric and very, I don't know.
Well, hopefully there's a point to it.
Yeah, I think there is. No, I think there's a point to it. It's about the life you live. Is the life you live just about amassing things, or is it about helping others? Obviously, the work you do with these men, helping them get back on their feet. How long have you been doing that type of thing?
The prison entrepreneurship program, probably, I'm terrible with timelines. I want to say
couple years?
More like 6 years ago. And I sort of measure it by the guy that is now their CEO. Mm-hmm. He's a real, truly a dear friend. We started a business together, but I met him when he was still locked up. And I know that's been at least 5 years since he got out. What'd you ask again? About helping the guys.
Well, helping them out. Yeah, I mean,
when did I get into that?
Well, it's obviously not something that you did to get rich.
Yeah.
It's something that you've done, like some of these other things, that you had a passion for it.
Yeah.
You felt led to do it. You're doing it to help improve the fabric of your community, which is, I think, something that not enough of us do. We, like you said, like we keeps coming up in this conversation, we stand and we point and we observe the problem, but we almost do nothing to actually tangibly, pragmatically, practically try to fix the problem.
Good wording.
And that's what you're doing. How can people help you in your efforts to help these men?
Man, I love it. Well, one thing I was going to say, I love the way you teed that up, like, helping the community, yes. The way you said that made it sound lofty, like I want to make a difference in my...
I'm a wordsmith.
I know, you are. You definitely have a book in you. You got some, seriously, you can put together a sentence. There was more about when you get inside and you experience these guys and how hungry they are for life change. And again, man, I'm going to keep coming back to the Jesus thing of they're on fire for God.
Really?
That is so powerful. And it was like, damn, I want to be a part of this. So it's more about that as opposed to, well, I want to make sure I'm a pillar in the community and that kind of stuff. To answer your question, yeah, I mean, man, look that stuff up, prisonentrepreneurshipprogram.org. Get involved with it. It's fantastic. There's a bunch of different ways you can mentor guys. You can go inside the prison and listen to the business plan pitches. There's a bunch of different ways. The current organization that I'm, on staff with is called menofnehemiah.org. Same thing. These are guys. This is more of a substance abuse recovery program. 100% of them either heroin, coke, meth, OxyContin, or booze, and they're been through multiple rehabs and they're just trying to get it together. And they the roughest of the rough of stuff that they've been through. So just look those up online. They're worth getting involved. They're worth supporting. And there's stuff that's easy, that's a layup in my opinion of how you can. I mean, you can write a check is great. Money always moves the needle. Got to have, these are organizations that need cash to function. But just jump in, because it will, back to kind of the bigger picture of this conversation, of to live a bigger life on this side of whatever happens next. That's the kind of stuff that makes a difference. And you'll grow, you'll go into it. This happens all the time. Mission trips, or, I'm going to go serve the homeless, whatever this. You learn more from them. You learn more from the person that's living in abject poverty. You can learn plenty of stuff from the billionaire, the guy's making money. You'll learn more about life from those people that have been kicked hard. So just get in, look, it's worth it. It really is, because it'll change you so dramatically and give you a bigger brain, different worldview in the healthiest of ways, and give you a more robust life. So.
Yeah, I can only imagine the areas, the places that you've gone on your mission trips. So South America, you've talked about Haiti a couple of times, Africa, India. Mm-hmm. Which of those experiences was the most transformative? Can you put can you quantify which one of those changed you the most?
Yeah, the ones where it's Haiti, it's Rwanda. Kigali, I was talking to, Sekou, yeah, from Gold Coast, Africa.
Ivory
Coast, yeah.
Get your colors right.
So, but anyway, I was telling him how much, I love Africa, and, the stuff that stands out is the pain. Yeah. And that's what changes you, and it resonates. So here's 3 examples I'll give. In Rwanda, massive genocide happened in 1994. 750,000 people murdered in 90 days. Hutu and Tutsis, how they're warring. But because of what we were doing over there, and it was just, we were teaching to other, I'm not a pastor, but I was with other pastors, and we were teaching Bible courses to Rwandan pastors to help them kind of continue reconciliation. This was in 2004, so it was 10 years after, but it was like it happened yesterday for them. But we got to go to this place. It was the Holocaust Museum that they had built in Kigali, the capital of Rwanda, and it's an extraordinary building. It's about as big as the Perot Museum, maybe a little bit smaller than that, but really well done, and it shows all kinds of different genocides and Holocausts that have happened throughout our history, and it really just makes you realize how fucked up we just want to murder each other. It doesn't matter what century it is, we just get better at it, more effective.
Apparently.
Yeah. But anyway, they let us go out in this area that was the equivalent, it was 8 football fields of green grass. And they pulled back this metal door, and stacked were wooden caskets. And, you could only barely see through the floor to see these. And I was like, and they go, this is where most of the people, there's about 250,000 caskets in this underground, cemetery. And I can still see that visual of and then looking out on the grass and realizing how many bodies in 3 months. And this is like macheted, torched, horrific ways to die. And then when you do the math on, I think I'm right about this. I know it's 750,000, or that's the estimate. 700, some people say 900,000. Kigali's got 1 million people. So our translators, the people we were working with, every Rwandan you could meet with, it's not like, my second cousin died. It was like, my mom died. My sister died. That stuff impacts you. And then where it goes to a whole other level is then I would watch them turn around and pray to the same Lord that I worship. And I'd go, how can you still care about this guy that let all this stuff happen? You wrestle with that sort of stuff. So there's one example that still, it's like that's an ongoing wrestling match. The other one was Cuba. This one blows me away. Through the translator, we're in that trip. We were in Havana, and we were looking over the Cuban harbor, I think is what it's called, or Havana Harbor. I think that's it. And through the translators, the Cuban guy was saying that his brother lived in Minnesota. And I go, wow, how does brother end up in, because we'd heard, they're trapped. It's not like they can just hop on a boat. And he goes, yeah, well, he put 3 inner tubes together and, floated to the Florida Keys with 2 of his buddies. And I was like, God, man, that's fantastic. Man, bravo. The other 2 guys, are they up there in Minnesota too? Guy puts his head down. I'm like, what? Tear starts coming, speaks through the translator. I'm like, what? And he goes, the other two guys got eaten by sharks.
Man.
And so you just sit there and you got to hold that. I'm about to give him a high five because I was like, great, you guys made it. So you can't even wrap your head around. And the guy said, he goes, you guys, Americans don't understand. We will risk getting eaten by a shark to get off this island because we're trapped. Well, we don't. Again, Disneyland. America's fantastic. Huge fan of a lot of it, but it's so hard for us to even understand that sort of worldview. So I don't know what I want to, lack of a better word, roll around in that grit to make me have stronger empathy for people who start off in a fucked position. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Haitians, same thing. This is a more of an upbeat, positive story. The first time I went to Haiti, we're in a Land Rover, we're driving, and the roads are all messed up, so you can't get anywhere fast. 2 or 3 Land Rovers while we're driving along. It's hot, it's Texas hot, that kind of stuff. This Haitian guy runs up next to a shirtless, taps on the window. They don't have bottled water. They've got these kind of plastic bag water stuff. He's holding it on his head. We're going about 15 miles an hour in the Land Rover. He runs up next while he's running, knocking on the door, offering water. And I'm like, yeah, man, I'll take a couple of waters. Hand it to him, reaches up on top where he's holding these waters while he's running, hands them to me, and I give him the equivalent of 20 cents, something like that. He runs ahead of us to get to the Land Rover in front of us. I can still see that visual. I'm like, that's this dude's hustle. This is his job. Those sorts of things, I'm like, wow, if I could get that guy back to the States, he'd be running Google. When you're hustling like that.
No doubt.
But that kind of stuff sits with you, or if I catch myself waking up going, man, this damn hangnail, right. Poor little boy, whoa, that kind of stuff. And you just remember, like, wait. And so those sorts of things, impact that's what resonates. And I've got other
hundreds
ones as well.
Of stories.
Yeah, I mean, you see that stuff. And it's always related to the abject poverty thing.
The well-lived life, we've mentioned that a couple of times this afternoon. The well-lived life is a multifaceted life. Maybe it's a wheel, and it's got many spokes in it, and if it's a round wheel, it rolls well. Talk about your involvement in physicality, physical exercise training, the pugilism coaching that you do, and how being active with your body affects your mind and makes you a better person.
Yeah, man. I mean, that last thing you said, it's probably the teaching the boxing. And again, it's like, I call it's a fitness class. So people aren't sparring, but it's, so you're learning all combinations and some Taekwondo and Muay Thai stuff in there. But it is that. It's like, all right, I want to stay physically as strong as possible as I'm getting older to keep the mind sharp. Because I'm not a chapter and verse guy, but there are, verses about, the physical body is a temple, take care of it. But the point is to keep your spiritual mind sharp. So everything I'm doing on the physicality part, helping, in the class, there are men and women. But when you see a woman who now she knows the mechanics of how to throw a punch and she's got some confidence, I like that. I'm like, cool, man, that helps, in a self-defense kind of way. Or insecure guy that maybe didn't grow up as an athlete learns, punch combinations. You see his confidence grow. So that's, micro level stuff, but I'm like, cool, man, this is great. On top of that, me getting to stay in shape. I like coaching, for lack of a better word, showing people something that it's always funny too, that how intimidated people are. I go like, these are bags.
Right.
The bag is not going to hit you back.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. But it shows how much we're worried about. But people are watching me. I'm
Yes.
like, no, they're not. They're all in their own head trying to figure out the punch combination. But all that stuff inspires me, But it is. I'm always going to take it back to the spiritual of like, Lord, you've given me this physicality to use your word. I'm going to own it as long as I can to keep my mind sharp. While you got the clock ticking, I always say he's got the ticker as long as we're here. Mm-hmm. He controls that. I want to use it to the best of my ability to make a difference, you know?
Love it.
Yeah.
You're still taking commissions. So if people want to reach out to you and commission a work of art, how can they reach you to do that?
Go to artisticlion.com.
That's Lyon.
Thank you. Yeah, Lyon, no S. And you'll see, you know, the book promotion there for I'm Not Hitler. And then click on things I paint. You can see the portfolio. And then there's a way to contact me. And I'll tell you, this is what's, you know, this is how the process works is people can find a photo of a family member, celebrity they like. I take the photo, import it into Photoshop, do a bunch of different digital manipulations, change the colors, distort it, give them back like 10 options so they know what they're going to get. And then I'm going to do a painting. It's not anything digital. It's, you know, acrylic on canvas, big, large scale, 5 feet by 7 feet, big stuff.
These are amazing. They are.
Thanks.
They are.
But anyway, just so they know, because I think people are scared, like, oh, what if he uses neon pink or something? I'm like, no. It's going to look like 90% of what you see in this digital image. But I appreciate you.
Absolutely.
And you know what I do? I want people, if you don't mind, you know, I only want to plug the book because I want people to wrestle with what we started with.
Yeah.
This idea. Are we good with it? You got another minute?
Absolutely.
Okay, yeah, you know, that you're going to pass away.
Yep.
And let me just tell, so the title, the I'm Not Hitler book, this is why people always go, oh,
I got mine on Amazon, by the way.
It's available on Amazon. Is this because you're going to die? So I get in these conversations a lot. And again, I'm upfront about, look, I want to point you towards this Jesus dude, but hey, man, just wrestle with it. And you got to bring him into the equation, wrestle with Islam, Judaism, Deepak Chopra, spiritualism. But the title, I think, makes sense because people go, what's that about? To get in these conversations, you go, Jess, man, you believe in heaven? Yeah, man, I do. Cool. How do you get there? 9 out of 10 people, they go, man, I'm going to do my best. I'm trying to be a good person. I go, really? Okay, so it's like a measurement. There's the good people and the bad people. And they go, yep. And I go, how's that work? Where exactly is the cutoff point between the good people and the bad? And by the way, I've never met a single person that ever goes, man, I am fucked. I'm going to hell. Everybody goes, I'm a pretty good guy.
Yeah.
Hey, I made some mistakes.
Oh,
this is
man.
and this happens in 30 seconds. And I go, okay, but again, man, tell me like exactly how good do I have to be? And to a T, it's like, well, you know, I'm not Mother Teresa or anything, but I'm not Hitler.
Yeah.
The point being, and I always go, so you just compared yourself to like the top 2 or 3 worst people in the world?
Right.
That's not, so you're basically saying you're kind of mediocre because we know you're not Gandhi. We know you're not Nelson Mandela. So you're just somewhere in the middle.
And even those two gentlemen were not white as the driven snow in terms of their character.
Exactly. So part of it is to say, do we even know, does God even use these metrics of good and bad? And then I'm still waiting for the person that can tell me, here is the perfect measurement of metrics of you got to donate this much money, you got to volunteer this many times, you can't get angry at your wife. Show me that list. And then you can see what Scripture says about, he doesn't even measure that way. So the book covers all that kind of stuff.
It does.
You know, I'm not that bad.
Yeah, I'm not
that
Hitler
good either.
How'd you pick Hitler? I guess I could have said I'm not.
Joseph Stalin.
Yeah, Stalin.
Yeah.
Karl Marx. In the spirit of accountability, when should we expect the next book, the devotional, to drop? Do you have an idea on that?
It's with a editor, proofreader right now. Maybe, I'm going to say by Thanksgiving.
There you go. Just in time for the holidays. We should all be reading more. Hopefully through quarantine, people have picked up a book.
Amazon sales are huge right now.
And if for any other reason, all of these entertainment platforms are running out of programming because they haven't been able to shoot for so long. So hopefully you are picking up. Do you have a title for it yet, or is that still in the works?
Yeah, it is. It's a long-winded title, but I'll connect the dots on that. It's something along the lines of this. It's finding faith in Dave Chappelle, the Rolling Stones, Netflix, Brene Brown, Bill Gates.
Eddie Vedder.
Do I do anything on Eddie Vedder? I don't know if I do.
All right.
I might have, but anyway, the point being...
He's a lover, not a fighter.
There you go.
Yeah.
That it's connecting the dots on cultural things and then looking at that through a spiritual lens. So...
Brene's great, right?
Yes.
Her TED Talks are awesome.
You're Brene... Oh, I love Brene Brown.
Man, thank you for your time.
Dude.
Good to see you. It's
totally
been too
an honor.
long.
Thank you very much, Jess.
Most
Enjoyed
definitely. Well, that was awesome, and I knew it would be. Mike's awesome, and he's just involved in so many things and lives such a full, productive life. Again, his book, I'm Not Hitler, available. I got it on Amazon. You can get it anywhere books are sold. You can also go to his website, artisticlion.com. You can always drop a comment below, which I'd love to read. Just whatever you feel like commenting on, your thoughts, your comments. Hopefully you enjoy the podcasts each week. You can also hit me on Instagram at Jess from the Northwest. If you'd like to work together, please shoot me an email live@autographconstruction.com, and I'll see you next time.